Baruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Irgun Shir Torah, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Zev Smith on Dvarim Asorim Mishum Sakana, actions that are dangerous. That's great schus is sponsoring a shir called Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651, email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rabbi Smith.
Over the years, we were zeicha to learn a number of inyanim about Sakana. We spoke about the sugi basa, v'dogim, fish and meat, food under the bed. We spoke about foods that are dangerous, kasha l'shikha, Rabbi Yehuda Chassid Tzava. Today we have a new sugya. Really, it's the question of sakana of non-foods. In other words, people ask about walking around without shoes. Is there a problem with that? Keeping clothing under the bed, blowing out a candle, a child looking in a mirror before he has teeth. You know, the list goes on and on. In the camp we have shaila, where people heard about sleeping with your feet facing the door. So this is a big sugya, as we'll see, and it's a kraftige sugya. It's a very full sugya because it touches base with the whole sugya of sakana and many other parts of it that we really have to know. But I think the most important akdama is to mention that, you know, some have an attitude like, you know, I'm not into all this stuff. You know, I'm a shechnarach person, and you know, I don't look for schools. I like the Torah the way it is. Now that in itself is incorrect, because as we'll see in Shulchan Aruch, there's plenty about dvarim asorim mishum sakana. Now that's also true. There are plenty that are totally minhagim, but that's our job today, to try to clarify what's halachah, what's totally a minig, and what maybe is unfounded. It's very clear, as I mentioned, that this is a Shulchan Aruch sugya. In 3 places, the Mechaber devotes an entire siman, Arachayim Kuf Ayin Gimel. That's about Bas V'Dogim. Yeridea Kuf Tezayin has a variety. And the very last siman, in Gans Dalach Chelki Shulchan Aruch, Chayshemish B'Tav Chav Zayin, is all about Sakana and Yanim. But what's noteworthy, how the Shulchan Aruch presents it in a very unmistakable way. The Mechaber in Tav Chav Zayin Ches, if a person is not careful with Inyani Sakana, he's over on the issur of Ishamalacha Ushmar Nafshecha Ma'oid, and I guess Nishmart L'Nafshei Seichem. The next sif he says, if a person, and he gives mashalim, as we'll soon see, things that are really a pretty vaita chashash rachuk. But after that, he says, the Ramah adds, a person has to be careful of all sakana yanim. Now, even though sakana yanim has 2 connotations, it means something that's dangerous, Pashut, physically dangerous, and then there is some things that are not physically dangerous. It's what we call dvarim skulium. But the Ramah does make a sweeping statement. You have to be careful in all of these things, because Sakanta Chamirah Meisura. Now that's a lashon Gemara in Chul and Daf Yud, where the Gemara is talking about a question of mayim megulim, leaving water uncovered, which is not dangerous from a medical perspective. But the Gemara says that mayim megulim is so much awesome, even if it's a small chashash that we would say is mutter in other areas of halachah, but chamirah sakanta meisura. And taka in Arachayim Kufayin Gimel Beis, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about between basa and dogim, between fish and meat, you have to be careful. Chamirah sakanta meisura. So twice we find regarding our sugya, not only is it asa, chamirah sakanta meisura. And the Shulchan Aruch concludes, Dalach Chelki Shulchan Aruch, the end of Tav Chav Zayin, the person says, I could do what I want, it's my life, you know, we live in a world of freedom, and you could do what you want. They give him makas. Zokte ber hagoyla, he's right, it's his guf, why can he make a decision? So it's noteworthy words, beautiful words, that he says, the Bari Olam gave us the greatest gift. You know, what's the greatest gift? The gift of life. A moment, you could turn into nitzchias, you could learn Torah, do chesed, and daven. And if someone endangers his life by doing something that's unsafe, he's like saying, Bari Olam, I don't need your life, I don't need your matana, and there's no afkirusa, there's no hefkeris more than that. So in other words, shmiras haguf nefesh, as we call it, is acknowledging the gift of life, and every moment that we can be zocheh to live is matana. So why jeopardize? Why play around with even a moment of life? So that's why, no doubt about it, that this is a Shulchan Aruch sugya. In fact, it's interesting, the Lavush in Yeridea Kuf Tezayin and the Aruch HaShulchan Kufta Zayin Aleph, both say an incredible thing, almost kalach hayad. The way the Aruch HaShulchan and the Lavush both put it, that Lamaisa, since Chamirah Sakanta Meisura, you have to be careful not to do things that are dangerous, because a person might be violating Achaz Dimchem L'nafshei Seichem Edrosh, which is the Azara for suicide. The Aruch HaShulchan and the Lavush both equate the two. The halachic implication of Chamirah Sakanta Meisura, that might be tantamount to suicide. Of course, it's more of a spiritual suicide, but the point is clear. It's not just, you into it, you're not into it. It's not, all size fits all. Now, of course, I must mention the fact that we can understand it, that we can explain it. Like, what's wrong with food under the bed? Tell me, I don't understand. So I give a mashal. Imagine you tell your El to Zayda, you take out a little machine from your pocket, it's called a cell phone, and say, watch this, I'm going to press a few buttons, and I'm going to talk to my son in Eretz Yisrael. They'll think you're crazy. How do you do that? Imagine you take a little program. It's called the Oitzah Chochma. I'll give you an example. And there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of tshuvas. You press the word matzah, and out comes 500,000 tshuvas that mention matzah. How does it work? You can explain it. It's the size of a 3x5. So, okay, maybe someone can explain it. I mean, I certainly can. So therefore, I say it doesn't exist. I'm in denial. The fact that we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not there. The Chavas Yair in a beautiful Tshuva Reish Lamed Gimel gives a person Musa. He tried to figure it out, and if he didn't, therefore it doesn't exist. He goes, the rest of the world verstehst du, yeah. The miracles of nature verstehst du, yeah. So the Maisa of this we're convinced, and we're certainly focused on doing what's right. But here's a little of the challenge, because in Gemara, as we'll see, there are many inyanim of Sakana that are not mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. We have 3 simanim, it is a lot, but as the Pichadash in Kuf Tezayin, Sif Kat and Tes writes, L'shleimus HaMalacha, I'm going to mention all the Sakanas in Shas, but we don't keep them all. So how do we know what mechuyev to, what's tali minig, and what's optional? So let me give you a little of a klal, hopefully, and then we'll apply it lemaisa. There's a Mishnah in Trumas Perik Hey, Mishnah Dal. It's also Yishalmi in Trumais, that discusses the very big sugya, which could be a share for itself without doubt, and that's called Gilui, Maya Megulim. Now Maya Megulim is unique because some people are makbid to the nth degree, and some people say, what's that? Now what is Taka Maya Megulim? So to make a long story short, Maya Megulim is a Mishnah, a Mechaber Shulchan Aruch, that we don't drink liquid that was left uncovered. Taken by Chaim Kanievsky, his father, the Stipler, the Chazon Ish, even if they left the room for a moment, they would cover the water. And some people never heard of it, or certainly not makbid. What's pshat? So the Mechaber Kuf Tezayin Aleph says, Maskin Shenizgalu is asa, but today, She'ein L'chashim Mitzuyim Beineinu Mutter. Now this is based on a Tais and Be'ad Avav, but this is a very big chiddush. There's something that's also midin HaMishnah, Gemara, yet Zok Toisvis, the reason why we don't drink Megulim is because a snake might have deposited the poison. Well, in Borough Park and Flatbush, most of the world, there's no snakes roaming around. So what's your problem? So Toisvis takes the liberty of saying the Gemara is irrelevant. Now, of course, some argue, you have to have a bezin that's as prominent as the first bezin. You don't just obliterate Allah and Shulchan Aruch. But at the end of the day, the Mechaber says that because there's a different social life and we don't have snakes, you're allowed to overlook halacha. So this is klal 1 we're going to refer to as nishtanu hativim. In other words, the halacha never changes. Chas v'shalom. But if halacha is based on a prevalent fact, a metzias, and there's no longer that metzias, so you don't have to worry about it. Now this word nishtanu hativim I didn't find in Gilui, but I found it in a bigger chiddush. And that is the big sugya in Archaim Kufay and Gimel. We once gave a whole share about it, of eating fish and meat together, which is a terrible sakana. Do you know that the Taz holds that if a drop of fish mixed into a big cholent, the whole cholent is awesome. I bittul b'shishim, so the Taz, Chamirah Sakanta Meisura. Now Baruch Hashem, we don't pass it like the Taz. Most places can hold that if it's poisonous, it's also bottled. Poison becomes, it's not toxic. It gets diluted. But the poison of basar v'dagim is a tremendous sakana. Yet the Magen Avraham suggests, efshe bizman hazeh, there's no big sakana because nishtanu ativius. And Magen Avraham suggests that maybe today we don't have any bad reaction to fish and meat. Now, this is the concept of nishtanu ativim, where we see it in the Magen Avraham. Rabbi Zev told my shver, in his lifetime, he saw 2 nishtanu ativim regarding nashim, whatever it is, but he saw 2 changes of nature. One of them I could mention, that women that were nursing never conceived another child, and today we see people having children one after the other. He said in his times he never saw this, because when a woman was nursing, she wouldn't conceive. But the point is that nature, the human nature changes. Look how long they lived in the times of the Torah. I mean, we could go on and on. But Lamaisa, the Magen Avraham bases it on a Rambam. Okay, this is not accepted by most poskim. But the word nishtanu ativim, as we'll see, is a very key word. So the first klal we have is nishtanu ativim, when that applies. Then we have a bigger chiddush, and that's based on no less than 6 Gemaras, but I'll mention Yavamas, Ayin Beis. You'll look on the side, you'll see the other Gemaras, and that's the concept of Shomer Pesayim Hashem. Now that's a pasuk in Tehillim, we say Halah Shalom, but basically it means that the Baruch Shalom watches foolish people. Now what does that have to do with our sugya? So I'll give you one of the 6 mishalim. In Yavamas Ayin Beis, the Gemara says that in order that a child should survive the milah, there has to be a certain wind, a ruach tzefainis, that will help him recover. So much so that without milah, it's dangerous without the ruach tzefainis, it's dangerous to make a milah. The Gemara records in history that in the 40 years Yidden were in the midbar, they didn't make milah. So the Gemara, V'edna the dashu barabim. How come everybody's making milah? We all made bris and no one thought about the wind. The dashu barabim shomer pesayim Hashem. So it seems that this is based on 2 factors that combine. First of all, it's not a sakana gedola. It's just a chance. That's number 1. We'll soon see. It's a miyut of time that it brings a sakana. But primarily, the word is dashu barabim. If people have been doing it and no one died from it, then you're allowed to do it. Maybe taka. The fact that no one died from it is a raya nishtanu ativim, like the first heta. But that's not the point. If people do it, the Baruch Shem watches Klal Yisrael. Yechidim do things, that's suicide. If Klal Yisrael does it, and nothing happens, you could rely on that. Now I always wondered, the first few people that did it, what was their heta? Maybe they didn't have a heta. But I'll give you a mashal, one of the many mishalim, but the Divrim Malkiel and Chelik Aleph Siman Ayin asked an obvious question. A person gets on a boat, and he gets to his destination, he benches goimel, because he was in sakana. So what's the heta to go on a boat? Correct the Divrim Malkiel. So the heta, he says, is that this is derech hateva, people have to travel, we have to go for panasa, and dashu barabim. And of course, the chashash is only the way he calls it, a small chance, a miyat she'enei matzui, chashash rechoika. That combination, people do it, and it's a miyat, a chashash, a miyat she'enei matzui. That's the yisoid of dashu barabim, she'en pasayim Hashem. I saw a beautiful Teres Chaim, that's the original Teres Chaim, one of the earliest Achronim. He crystallized the point even more than that. He says, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed, on the base, speaks about Gilui. In those days, it was not optional. Everybody kept Gilui. But the same Gemara says that regarding fruits, te'enim, raisins, and te'enim, there's the same problem of sakana. But you're allowed to eat it because dashu baram shem pasayim Hashem. So for the Teres Chaim, I don't get it. Both are the same chashash of a snake. But water the velt is mekel. Water the velt is, in time tomorrow was machmir. And raisins and te'enim, the Gemara says you're allowed to be mekel then? What's the chiluk? Said the Teres Chaim, because water a person can be careful. Cover the water. Cover your pitcher. But he says raisins and te'enim, that the minig was groigus with smukim, they left it on the roof to dry. You couldn't cover it or else it wouldn't dry well. So people had to do it. So the fact that people had to do it and no one could avoid it, so we are like psoyim. And we're like foolish, not that we're foolish, but we have no choice. So he's adding another point. If you could watch yourself, then watch yourself. If you can't, then the Baruch watches. Of course, no one wants to be a pessy, but pessy doesn't mean foolish, it means that we're helpless. So this is the second Yisrael you refer to as Shem Pesayim Hashem. Now, of course, la halacha, we don't ever ignore halacha, but if people do it, then of course we're allowed to be Saimach on it. Now, this is, again, the Yisrael of Shem Pesayim Hashem. Now, someone told me another attitude, and that's his attitude. I'm not into these things, like Kapid, like Kabdinam Bahdi. Okay, now that's quoting or maybe misquoting a Gemara. Now let's see the Gemara. In Psachim Kuf Yud Amid Beis, the Gemara speaks about Zugos. And the Gemara says, someplace they were Makbid, you have two, someplace they were Makbid. Klal de Milsa, called the Kapid Bahdi. If you're Makbid, okay, like Kapid Bahdi, Umiyu Lemechish Mi Boy. So first of all, he left out that part of the quotation. Zok Rashbam, that Kapid Yoisamidai, a person that's excessive, he's too much, then it's going to hurt him. The like Kapid Bahdi Lazika, don't worry, but Miyu Lemechish Mi Boy. Afilu man the like Kapid. So here the Rashbam is saying that basically excessiveness is always no good, and rather in these things it's worse. OCD, this is one of the expressions, worried about that. That's not Yiddishkeit. That's nervin. But like Kapid, like Kabdina Badei, it's not as bad as, if you don't make it so bad, it's not so bad. But this itself is not really a makar to be makel, because the Rashbam does say, Gemara says, L'meichash mi boy. But where we see this in something that's not halacha, clear-cut halacha, something that we find is a makar, but not necessarily in halacha, then we could say, I'm the like Kapid, and I don't have to worry about it. I'll give you an incredible mashal. We devoted over the years, I think it was 3 shiurim about Tatzavar B'Huda Chosid, regarding names, regarding homes, windows, closing up doors, and of course haircuts and nail cutting on Rosh Chodesh. And the emphasis, some Kilas and Klaisel are makbid in every bit of the Tzvar B'Huda Chosid. Yet there are people that are not geiris it. What's pshat? So the Chasam Soif in the Tshuva and Even Ezra Chelik Aleph Kuf Tezayin, and Rav Moshe even more so in Even Ezra Aleph Dalid, both say regarding B'Huda Chosid Tzavah, the like Kapid, like Kabdinan. Now it's not clear if the Chasam Sofer himself was makbid, because he says he didn't see the Tzavah, but Rav Moshe himself had 2 daughters, and they married Rav Moshe's 2 Eidim, the name Moshe. Rav Moshe held that it's a gather of like Kabdina Badei. If it's not your minig, you don't have to worry about it. Now this is certainly based on the famous Noid B'Hud and Even Ezra Tanyana Simonai and Tes, that he shows that some of Rav Huda's Achasid Tzavah are keneged Gemaras. Lamashal, he says, don't marry a niece. 2 brothers should marry 2 sisters. And he says it's clear that Yehuda Chassid Tzavah was written only for his family. Okay. Now others argue that the Chaim has a tshuva against that. Now I'm not getting into that. That's not in our domain to be mimachriya. But that's where you could apply the like couple like Kabdina. If you say in your family there's no such minig, so you're relying on the Noid Yehuda, the Chasam Sofer, Moshe Feinstein. But to take an halach and say it's optional, that's wrong. By Zugais Taka, we find Taka that in Shulchan Aruch we're not so machma. Then you could say like couple like Abdin and Badei. And last but not least, then we'll apply this al pisei the Shulchan Aruch. There are certain minhagim that you can't find in Makar and halacha. You can look at the Rishonim, it's not there. So someone said these what I call baba maises. I says, let me tell you 2 points. First of all, I heard this, I can't verify this, but I heard that the concept of Baba Maisa came from Askilim. They wanted to ridicule the Torah HaKadosha, and how do they make a joke out of it? They call things Baba Maisas. Either Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, or Baba Basra. And the whole Torah is one Baba Maisa. Okay, is that true or not? In the Karam Divrei Emes. But the Emes is, Baba Maisa is a very honorable description, and let me explain. The Yushalmi and Trumis, Ches Gimel, it's also an Avodah Zarah, and a big sugya of this Yushalmi is our sugya mamish. You have to be careful what people say not to do. And even if you don't know a makar, if people say don't do it, stay away. The Heishav Moshe, the Yisach Moshe, and Simon Yud Gimel quotes a Rashba. I'll read his Heilig Lashon. That you remember what the Rashba says. Ein litchais hakabolah sheyesh biyad nashim zekenais b'mei ameinu. Don't disregard what the Baba say. Even leishishim ribuy moifsim hamarim soisrei. You could have 600,000 rayas that it's mutter, but the Baba sagt asa is asa. The chayk Yisraeli hu l'maylam yatev v'yaseichel. There's something called Mesorah that doesn't need any more than the word Mesorah that says a lot. The Yiddish Babas have a Mesorah. Now, this Rashba that he quotes, that exact lashon is not found. The Rashba in Chelik Aleph, Siman Tes, says a similar lashon. But this is the honorable description of a Baba Maisa. The Baba Zok, the Zayd Zok, they didn't make it up. You know, they have a Mesorah, they have a Kabbalah, they have Minhagim. So such a thing like that, you have to realize, you have to be careful. The Chasam Sofer in Archaim and Aleph criticizes an Adam Gadol. He says, how dare you not be Shaleach Yad in Minhagi Yisrael? You call him Minig Buris, Heim Be'eres Chatzuv Mimor Ma'im Chayim Noiz Milavonayim. A Minig is Halik. You know, you play around with Minig and you disorganize the letters. You know what it spells? Gehenim. So you don't play around with Minhagim. Oh. But here we could say the like couple like abdina. If that's not your minig, your Baba didn't tell that to you, so it's not your minig. Something like that is totally subjective. That's totally in the person. So now we have Baruch Hashem the Yisayis. Let us apply it al pisei the Shulchan Aruch, and let's see, what is, and hopefully, and the clarkite in this sugi. Question number 1 in say the Shulchan Aruch, and that's people that asked, they brought food into the bathroom. Now this could be either by mistake, he had something in his pocket, or a young child ran into the bathroom with food. I heard a shayla, and someone has a very small bungalow and he keeps canned food in the bathroom. And I think the most common is when people have an upstairs or a basement where there's a bathroom but there's no sink. Can you take water out of the bathroom to drink, to wash negovasa? People go to a hotel, typically there's no washroom, especially in the room itself. So logic would dictate that if you go into the bathroom, you come out, you have to wash your hands, then obviously there's a ruach run the bathroom. So how can I eat food that was in a bathroom? But that's not necessarily true. As the Paiskim explain, we don't find halachah that food in the bathroom is asa. The only place we find is chatchila, don't eat in the bathroom. But it doesn't say food in the bathroom is asa. It does say ayoytze beisakise in Siman Dalet, see if you test, you have to wash your hands. And the svar is pashut. Because Ruach Ra is attracted to Kedusha. A person has Kedusha. Food has much less Kedusha than a human being. Just like a tummy mace does not apply to a guy because there's no Kedusha. So who said that this Ruach Ra affects food? Maybe only human beings. And Taka the Afarkasta de Anya and Chelik Aleph Kuf Lamed Gimel, he discusses this, and he says that even by food under the bed, which we'll soon see, is a legitimate sakana based on a Gemara and Shulchan Aruch Kuf Tezayin, but most places was on Asa B'diavad. Kolshkein, this, he says, why do people not bring food in the bathroom? He said, that's the Yishalmi and Trumais that I told you, what the Baba say, but the Asa B'diavad, that we don't find. And I have a list of a half a dozen Paiskim that say food in the bathroom, avada it's al snakiyas, don't bring food in the bathroom, but b'diavad, we don't ask for food that was brought into the bathroom. Now there is a Kabbalah b'shem Abshalom Belza that food in the bathroom should not be eaten, so Belza Chassidim don't need me to tell them that they should be makbid taka, but basically food in the bathroom is not asa b'diavad, and that's certain. Question, a person goes to donate blood, a wonderful mitzvah, or he goes for a blood test. Does he have to wash his hands after he gives the blood? Now, why should he wash his hands? So again, it's an Archaim, Siman Daled, see if you test about a person that was Mekis Dam, in Yiddish called Bankis, he has to wash his hands. So maybe Huadin here. So here we come to another big Yisoid, and the Rabbi Zalman and Chashleim, the Perik Chaf, see if you test spells it out. And he has this shayla. Someone that donates blood should have to wash his hand, because just like Bankis. So he says a klal, that dvarim skuliim that we don't understand, ein lecha boy ela chidushay. If it says this, then azayidas. Don't start adding, extrapolating huadin, because if you understand it, you could say huadin. But if it's something out of our range, ein lecha boy ela chidushay. And he gives this mashal. He says, Chazal said to wash your hands after it was Meikis Dam. Why? Because the akaza was a refuah. That was their refuah. I don't know how it worked, but that was the refuah. Here, it's not a refuah to donate blood, it's a mitzvah. So besides Shem Mitzvah Yedid Avera, he says, but it's not a refuah. Who said it's sakana? And even a blood test, they're just checking the blood. It's not a refuah. Rav Moshe in Yeridei Chele Gimel Siman Chaf says the same thing regarding what most people are saying on, that we don't eat eggs that were left uncovered overnight. If they were cracked, they're not covered, unless you add things, whatever it is. So why did people use bottled eggs? In commercial products, they use big bottles of eggs that were cracked. So Moshe says, must be, it's only eggs and not a product that they sell. In other words, if it's not exactly what the Gemara said, you could be mekel. Now, again, some are machma in both of those, fine. But the klal is by dvarim skuliim, ein lecha boy ala chidusha, and we'll soon see other examples. I'll give you an interesting mashal. There's a minig Ramah on the end of Kuf Mem Tes about kissing the Sefer Torah, and that was a minig Yisrael, and still is the minig to kiss the Sefer Torah. The Chechanov and the Tzlois of Ram and the Sidda and of Henkin in Kol Kisvi Amud Kuf Chav Gimel had a problem with that, because if you're the first person that kissed the Sefer Torah, it's fine. But how many people before you kissed the Sefer Torah, and they left the germs, saliva? So isn't that a problem of nishmarat manaf sheseichem? I used to observe Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky when he would kiss the Sefer Torah, he would bend down, it would be a big avoida, and he held it with two hands as he's embracing it. But at the end of the day, he kissed his hand and not the mantle of the Sefer Torah. He held onto it, and he was showing kavod, but he kissed his hand. And I'm certain it was based on this concern. Rabbi Yashiv is quoted as saying he was makbid because the Chechanov says that he was an Adam Gadol. Now, the emphasis we'll soon see in Yeridei, their halachah is based on a concern of germs. So why most people kiss the actual mantle? And we know why. And this is a beautiful example of Shem B'Sayim Hashem. Did you ever hear by a hesped someone said he was Moised Nefesh, he kissed the mantle until he died? It doesn't happen. And the Pshalem Zalman Ali Chashleim Yud Beis Samaches, he says that he himself would kiss the mantle, and he says that this is, even though we find in Yeridei about germs, but since everybody does it, the minig is not like the Chechanova and Shem Pesayim Hashem. Chaim Kanievsky, he dismissed the whole problem. Ein Shem Chashash, Shem Mitzvah Yeda Davara. The point is, it's a beautiful example because everybody does it except for Yechidim. Now, we're not questioning Yechidim, the Kapid Kapdinan. But to say that everybody's doing what's called suicide is unthinkable. Of course, I should mention that Yaivitz already writes that when children kiss the Sefer Torah, make sure they're clean. They have running noses, whatever it is. That's not quite a Sefer Torah. But whatever we do, to be careful, we do. But kissing Sefer Torah is a bonafide dashu barabim and shem pesayim Hashem. I'll give you a mashal also in Hilchas Suda, but it's something that's beferish in halacha, and yet people are not makbid. In Kuf Samach Zayin Yud Ches, the Shulchan Aruch says that the Beitzeya that cuts up the challah should not put the cut challah into someone's hand. He should put it on the table. The Ramok has a makar from this, from a pasuk in Eicha, Perish Atziyim Biyadeha. It's based on a Rambam and a Rashba. Don't put the challah or bread during the week into a person's hand, put it on the table. What's wrong? So obviously, since an Avel is given bread into his hand, like the pasuk says, like the pasuk connotes in Eicha, so we're not Avelim, Baruch Hashem. Don't do things that Avelim do. Now, the untrained Bacha will say, Shaychus, I don't know, what are we worrying about? But that's a part of Yiddishkeit that we have to know. And Al Tiftach Pella Satan, we have to watch what we say. Kishkaga Yotzin Piyashal, you say something, it could happen. And the Gemara says in Masech Techula, when you learn Shechita, don't show it on yourself. Now, why not? I hear the Bacham talking. You die and I died. I said, we don't talk that way. The Gemara said, you don't talk that way. But they don't know. You have to tell them. It's part of the Messiah. So Eliyarabba, in our halacha, he says, don't put bread into someone's hand. The leilisra mazle. What does that mean? It means Yiddishkeit. You know, our actions count because we count. You do something like Avelis, it might bring to Avelis. Now, again, the Bacham don't know this, so they have to be told. But here's an halachah in Shulchan Aruch based on Rishonim. Now, the question is, you see people doing it, what are they being saimach on? So, Pasha, they never heard of it, but there's got to be more than that. So I saw a beautiful understanding in the Nefesh Chai. It's one of the, on the Shulchan Aruch, on this siman, he taka says something very logical. And he says that typically in the olden days they ate, as we see from the Gemara Pesachim, on small tables. That's why when Avel, he's hoifech shulchanei, turned over the table. What does that mean? Turned over the dining room table? It means his small table is turned over. So then it was mukhrach that an Avel you put into his hand. So an Avel was in his hand and the rest of people on the table. But today we all eat on a table, maybe it's no longer applicable. It's no longer near a kavelus. Now that's a wonderful reality that he's saying. The only problem is the Mechaba's times, they did not eat on small tables. And the Mechaba quotes La Halacha. So I saw the Muki Arachayim, Meraps and Igra Tmua, that the Welt is not concerned about a Halacha and Shulchan Aruch. And he says that Rizal doesn't mention it, and he's convinced that since the Maisa Nishtaka Adava, people just ignore the Halacha. Again, why the first people do it, I don't know. But this is a new example of Shayim Pesayim Hashem, Dashu Barabim, and like Kapid, like Kapdinon. So he's taking the places of saying that Allah and Shulchan Aruch is irrelevant. Why? Because of Shayim Pesayim Hashem. And the emphasis, if you notice, on this simple Allah, we have three of our Yisayidis. Dashu Barabim, like Kapid, like Kapdinon, and the Nefesh Chaya was marshalling the concept of Nishtano Tivim, different Metzias. Okay. Many people are still makpid, and taka is an inyan to be makpid, but if people don't do it, Shayim Pesayim Hashem. Another halacha with even a more prominent source, this is a Gemara, and that is in Shulchan Aruch Kuf Ayin Sif Aleph, Ein Masichan Besuda, Shemayagdim Kana Leveshet. Don't talk when you're eating, because the food might go down the wrong pipe, the windpipe, and that's a sakana. Now that's a word that we know all about it from Hilchas Pesach with Taiseba. But the Shulchan Aruch adds, even to say one word, asusa, gesundheit, is also a problem. In fact, the Magen Avram says, don't even talk and learning during a Suda. You don't want to have a shulchan that's like Mason. So talk before you eat or after you eat, but not during eating. And I'm certain there was a time that people did not talk during the Suda. Poik Chazi, people talk during the Suda. So for us, it's a simple Dashu Barabim. And again, you don't hear a story of someone dying because the food went down the wrong pipe. I don't know, maybe it was different Metzias then. But this is a classic example of Dashu Barabim. It could be a little more, and that the Prisha in Sifkat Nalef and our Siman points out that maybe in those days there was more of a problem because they ate Bahaseba. Haseba smallest, food goes down the wrong pipe. When a person is like we do, eating erect, maybe there's no chashash. So he says, I think that's why the Welt is not machmir, but miu zelai matzasi b'shum makom. I didn't find this. Now this is a beautiful insight. Plus, when you're eating, eating straight, there's not so much of a concern. And the Birkei Yosef writes, it always bothered me why people are not makbid until I found this beautiful chiddush of the Prisha. But this also has a problem, because the Shulchan Aruch quotes his halacha, and in his time they didn't eat Bahaseba. Plus, other Achronim ask, Leil Seder, we shouldn't talk during the Suda if you're eating Bahaseba. Lamaisa, it seems that the real heta is Dashu Barabim. I should mention the Pri Megadim on our siman, Afilu Bizman Hazeh, Shein Soimchen al Smoil, Ein Masichen, Ayin Prisha. In other words, he was aware of the Prisha's Tzad Heta, but he says not to be Soimach on it. The Mishnah Berurah also does not say today is different. So I think we should make somewhat of a compromise to be careful. Mitzad Dina Gemara, even bein tafshla is awesome. Don't forget, even between the courses. No, you want to be makel, at least before while you're swallowing, not to talk. Because that happens when the person talks and it goes down. Someone asked me, should I be, in things that Hashem B'Sayim Hashem, should I be machmer in them? Is there an inyan? So depending what, but I tell you what a Trumas Hadeshin points out in Chelik Aleph, Reish Yud Aleph. And he basically says that Shem B'Sayim Hashem does not apply to Talmidei Chachamim. Because if you know better, then do better. Now what is he saying? So here we can have maybe Yesh Lachkor. Shem B'Sayim Hashem, I'll ask you a question that's better than it sounds. Is that a Libatzchus or a Maila? In other words, people are doing it, so I hope for the best. Or maybe it's an issue of B'tachin. Shem B'Sayim Hashem, the Even Ezra says, rely on the B'Shtam. Don't be so worried. People are running to testing for this, testing for that. Relax. You're in good hands. If it's a Maila, then why be Machmer? But this Trumas Hadeshin, we see that it's not a Maila necessarily. It's if people do it, the B'Shtam watches. But says Trumas Hadeshin, a Talmud Chacham should be more careful. Do you know the Ritva writes, quoted by the Mukiyos and Yevamis, that if someone is careful and doesn't make a Mila when you don't have the room about Droimus, he's doing the right thing. He's pushing off Mila Bizman because of that concern. Dashe Barabim. So most Paisim do not accept this, but the point is, when you could do better, do better. Betachin, I say Betachin is good for going to work on Cholamoid or coming in business, being honest, then you have Betachin. But when something is dangerous and they had to Shem B'Sayim Hashem and you could do better, there's a tzad to do better. So here I'm not saying that in everything you have to follow this. But if people you see don't talk talk when they're eating, and we'll see other examples, there is a tzad to understand where they're coming from, because it's basically a limutzchus. Question: people are makbid not to allow a child or put a child on a table. Now, typically we don't put a child on a table, but let's say you have a child in an infant seat and you want to feed the child, put him on a dining room table. So this is probably based on a Gemara in 4 places. I think primarily, 3 places. Brachas, Nundal, Chagig, and Menachis, that says the concept of shulchan doimel mizbeach. Now that's again a vote of confidence for us Yidden. You know, our eating is an avodah. And our shulchan is a mizbeach. We have salt on the table, daimel mizbeach. Supposedly not to kill an insect on the table, daimel mizbeach. It seems that this is another expression of that chshivas of a yid, that we have a table that's a mizbeach. But the actual source is a Sefer Chassidim Tafsaf Kuf Chaf. He tells a story about someone that put his child on the table where he learned. It wasn't a dining room table, it was a stender or a learning table. And the child got hurt and cut his foot and got a bad wound. And he said, it's my fault because I allowed my child to run on my learning table. Now that's talking about a table that's miyuchet for learning. Why is the child running on it? But says the Yosef Oimitz, and this is in the print, it's page 278, the Sefer Chassidim is talking about a learning table, but hu adin on a dining room table. It's daimel mizbeach, it's not a place for children to be. Now, some people are even makbid, and I found this in a later achram, not to pass a child over a table. Okay, that doesn't say in the Sefer Chassidim Yosef Oimitz, but no doubt about it that putting a child on the table has a makar in Rishonim. Sefer Chassidim is one of the Rishonim. If you see people are doing it, they feed the child like that, no, Shem B'Sayim Hashem, because most people, I don't think, heard of this, but to keep a child on the table has a makar in Rishonim. Next halacha is also a very prominent source based on a Gemara. In Gittin Daf Ayin, Shloisha Dvarim Matizin Gufay Shel Adam Ve'eluheim Achal Me'omid or Shasa Me'omid. A person is supposed to eat or drink seated. In Sechet Derech Eretz, Perek Daled, Halacha Aleph, Mishu Talmud Chacham should not eat or drink when he's standing. That's more of an inyan of Kfoi Talmud Chacham, his Kavod, but basically the Gemara says eating or drinking standing is unhealthy. We find this not in Shulchan Aruch, but in the Magen Avram and Reish Tzadik Vav Dalid. But even though your minig is, those have the minig to stand by Havdalah, but don't drink v'la yishta ad sheyeshev. Drink the wine sitting. Okay, the Pais can say te'ima, a little bit. Te'ima is okay standing, and that's why I've not yet seen a Tzaddik Kedushin that drinks from the wine. If he does, or the Chassan, they should sit down under the chuppah, because that's te'ima. But basically, drinking or eating should be done while sitting. Besides the edelkeit of it, it's also the danger of it. Someone asked about drinking by water fountain. So rather some say water is different, even though it's not mukhrach, but could be te'ima is mutter. Reb Chaim Kanievsky is quoted as saying that Kibud Kali calls it Mesika, you're allowed to suck a candy. You don't have to sit down for that. But basically, it is a Gemara. And derech eretz, eating and drinking while you're sitting. Comes again the Rav Pa'olim, that's the Ben Ish Chai in his Tshuva Sefer Beis Mem Hey, and he asks a very striking question. The Rambam does not quote this Kapeda in his Sefer. Now the Rambam was very into in Yonim of Achila, eating healthy, more than other Rishonim, and Punktus he left it out. If it's dangerous, why did the Rambam bring it? So he says, Efshe nishtanu ativim, that this whole Gemara is no longer dangerous, nishtanu ativim. Now he does say lechatchila, and I imagine because if you could be careful, don't rely on Shem B'Sayim Hashem, and Takin Ben Ish Chai in Shana Aleph, Bahar Yud Aleph, don't eat or drink standing, and even Kais of Kiddush, sit down before you drink, Kais of Avdallah Hu Adin. But don't forget, he does say nishtanu ativim. So if you see people eating or drinking when they're standing, you don't have to be moicha. Hopefully we can rely on this nishtanu ativim. Someone told me, he heard it, said you can't pour a cup backwards. And let's say you're pouring someone from the right or the left side, then say, oh, give me some. So you take it and you pour it backwards into his cup. Now this I didn't find. I did see Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky said there's no makar for this. Maybe it comes from by a mace, by the tara they pour backwards. So he's like basically saying it's like cup or like kabdina. So if you see people doing it, you could be saying that like cup it like kabdina. Now how can you talk about sakana and not mention something that seems to be, but it's really not? And that is the kpeda that especially Nashim have, not to drink from the wine or havdalah. So the emphasis in Rishonim, this is absolutely not found. In fact, fakert. The Torah and Reish Tzadik Tes, the Machzavitri, record the minig that just like by every kaishal bracha you give to the Nashim, havdalah also. The Leket Yosha on page 57, the Chumas Hadeshen, when he made havdalah, he gave to his wife, sons-in-law, daughters, and daughters-in-law. And then he gave each one a bracha as he gave them the kaishal bracha. It was a whole procedure. Now, but Lamaisa, the Magen Avram does record in Reish Tzadik Vav Dalid, the minig is not to give, the women should not drink from the kais of Havdalah. Now this is based on a shlah in Masechta Shabbos in Chelik Beis, Amud Kuf Lamed Hey. The shlah says because Lamaisa, the chet of Adam, some say was with Geffen. So since she tried to be mavdil between the Bnei Shlaim and Adam with a Geffen, so therefore they don't drink from the yayin of Havdalah. Obviously, al pi Kabbalah. The big day Yesha, a later Achroin, on the Shulchan Aruch Siman Dalit, he quotes the Shlah, and he says, I have another reason. Because he says the Lamates Malachas are connected to Lamates Klalos, Sheniskal La'aydi HaNachash, she got 39 Klalos. Havdalas come to Matam Malacha, so Lamates, stay away. You notice no one set up as what people say it's dangerous, and they grow a mustache, which Bechal has no makar. But there are also reasons al pi halacha, I don't want to get into it now. My point only is this, that Lamaisa, the minig is quoted Magen Avram, and we keep the minig. In fact, the Ramah in the end of Reish Tzadik Vav says women should not make Havdalah. That's why the women are very makbid to hear from someone else. My only point is, if a woman has no choice, and she has to make Havdalah, what does she do about the wine? So someone said his wife makes on soda Chamar Medina. So first it doesn't help according to the Big Day Yesh's reason, that's not din in wine, but also that's a lack of priorities. Are you yaitz with soda? Now, there's not a sakana, and the Ramah Taka says lachatchil they shouldn't make Havdalah, but Mr. Brewer says if there's no other choice, they can make Havdalah and drink. Obviously, if a husband heard Havdalah by mistake, and his wife didn't hear Havdalah yet, so she should make her own Havdalah. Better than Mr. Brewer than make him make it again just for her. And I had a shayla and a grusha with a big family, and every Matzai Shabbos it's an ordeal to go to someone else to for Havdalah. She said, "Can I make my own Havdalah?" I told her 100%. How could I Matzai Almana more if a grusha more? If halacha we avoid making Havdalah, there's no choice. But let's say she has no choice. Every Matzai Shabbos packing it up, getting in a car. They live in an out-of-town suburban area, driving to someone's house, feeling like a schnorrer. She says, "I can't take it." I said, "So don't." make havdalah, you could drink gesundheit. Moving on to Yeridea, a lot of the Yishalmi's halachas are in Yeridea. In Yeridea Kuf Tezayin Dalid, based on the Yishalmi, a person should be careful from Zeyas Adam, because all Zeyas Adam is Sam HaMaves, Chutz Mizeyas HaPanim. I know no one eats sweat, but it could be Nageya. A person's fashvitz, especially children, after a game, and they have sweat on their hands. Be careful. That's poisonous. The Shulchan Aruch does say Zeyas HaPanim is okay. Zok Teshach, and I kid you not, there's a remez in the Torah, B'Zeyas HaPecha Toicha Lechem. That's the Shach. Obviously, this is out of our range, but I did see the Ben Ish Chai and Shana Beis, Pinchas Tezvav, be careful, person sweating on his hands. I'll give you a mashal. You go to a chasana, and then you go over to the chasana, and he's all fashvitz from a dance. So kiss him on his face is okay, because that's Zeyas Panim. But if you want to kiss his hand, and he has sweat on his hand, that's a problem. I saw, Gimel brings from Memorva Halois, if someone's tefillin fell into a pot of food. Now, how that happens, I stopped asking already. But he's not worried about if the tefillin is kosher and makes the food drape. He's worrying about the sweat that's inevitably in tefillin. So, obviously, there's something to talk about here. Lamaisa, typically we don't have sweat. Again, in a hot kitchen, if you're very sweaty, and don't let the sweat fall into food, even though that's probably batal b'shishim. Like most poskim that we hold, batal b'shishim applies even to bas v'dagim. But it's interesting how the Shulchan Aruch made a big asik. In fact, in Sif Hey, the Shulchan Aruch says don't put food on your underarm because there might be sweat. Now that we don't do, but I'll tell you what you could do by Shal Shudders. You want to take a bilkel and you put it under your jacket. So even though you're wearing a shirt, but if it's a very sweaty person, maybe the sweat goes through. So these things are just pretty light, but the message is that these things are real. The Shulchan Aruch and Sif Hey, also based on the Yishalmi, says don't put money in your mouth. Why? Because maybe roik of a mukashchin is on the money, like a type of germs. The Shach quotes the Ran that because it's germs. And some say also because of sweat, and also you might swallow it. But this made it to the Shulchan Aruch. Kavachaim says that you might choke on it. A common summer shaila I want to mention is people ask about keeping items under the bed. Because again, in a small camp, a small bungalow colony, there's not much room to keep the luggage, keep your clothing. So one thing I want to mention, we discussed this in the past, I'm not going to repeat it, but the Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Tezayin Hey, based on a Gemara Psachim, Kuf Yud Beis, now to keep food under the bed. There are some places that also even asa b'diavad. And I would say this, over the summer, I probably get 20 shilas, and I'm not magazim. From Bacham, they never heard this. I kept food under the bed. I didn't know. Is it mut? Is it awesome? A Bacha asked me last summer. He's the canteen manager, and all the food from the canteen he kept under his bed, so I want to steal it. Could he sell it as regular? I don't think he'd sell it as regular food any longer, because some say it's also b'diavad. But Bacham need a training. We know this. We have to make sure our children know this. This is halachah that's in Gemara and Shulchan Aruch. But that's not my question for today. Our question is: can you keep non-food? Shoes, suitcases, clothing, extra clothing. Today they have a bed that's made with a drawer under it. I don't know if you ever saw it. Is that a problem? So the chayra for Oyel Tamid Chacham, it's a Meferish Gemara. But Babasur Nun Chesem at Beis, Mitashat Tamachacham Keitzer. What's the bed of a Tamad Chacham? You only find his shoes under the bed. But a Mitas Amaretz, the Gemara Oitza Blum or Oitza Blus. You'll find anything and everything under his bed. If you don't know what that means, look under your child's bed. He has his report card, he has his bus pass, he has last year's sneakers, everything goes until you clean it for Pesach. So that's e-seder, that's someone that's not orderly, and that's an amoritz. But there's no problem of sakana. Rashi, Grada, and Sukkah, Chaf Alf Mabez, is a noteworthy Rashi. Rashi adds a little hezbollah. That put things under your bed, genaihu, shemarg b'nei abai yisham. And I think what Rashi means to say, if you keep, let's say, a box of tissues, a case of tissues under your bed, so that means your children have to go under your bed to take out the box of tissues. That's not theistic. A parent's bedroom should be off limit. Maybe that's what Rashi means. But Rashi is explaining the amiratzis of keeping things under the bed. But no one's saying that it's dangerous. Because the Gemara says, oichlin umashkin tachas amita. Why should I even think non-foods is a problem? And Taka, I have again a whole list of poiskim, Taka Tshuva, Kafachayim, and others say, well, how could it be a problem? It's almost keneged a Gemara. Bava Basra, even Pesachim, Rashi and Sukkah doesn't make a problem of sakana. The issue here is the Rabbeinu Gershom on the page in Bava Basra. His lashon is v'asla niach oichlin umashkin v'kelim acherim tachas amita. The word kelim, what does that mean? That means clothing, v'chayra. So this is why people get very nervous that you see in the Gemara it says kelim. But then again, that can't be as is, because the Gemara says in Bava Basra that mitas tam b'chacham, it has shoes. Amratzim has other things. So Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, again with his braid, the plates in Halicha Shleim Yud Gimel Samachei, he says it can't be that anything's a problem under the bed other than food. Rabbeinu Gershom, its Yadu is printed from a very inaccurate defus, and it's probably a tois at defus. The word kelim have to take out. And Taka, if you look at the new print that they put out in Shalayim Tavshin and Tess, they take out the word kelim. Not that they don't like it, but they found from the earlier print it doesn't exist. Now, some say kelim might be kli oichel, pots, more reasonable. But at the end of the day, again, I saw a number of poskim that lamaisa, there is no problem with anything but food or drink under the bed. I must mention the Mamshik, and you'll see in the new Mamshik, they reprinted the Chuvas. In his Toldos, he was very makbid. Nothing goes under the bed, even shoes. The Minchas Alaza also, in Dak Chaim V'Shalom, Oishin Membeis, was makbid from his father. Even shoes don't go under the bed. The Gemara, Ayin Sham V'Timtza. But basically, the halacha and lamaisa, anything can be under the bed. Again, amaratzis would be keeping other things as well. Now, in fact, some say sukkahs is better to keep your shoes under the bed in the sukkah than keep it exposed on the sukkah. It's not a kfayda sukkah. But basically, what I think is also pashut, the new type of bed that they have could be, all agree is okay, because it's not under the bed, that's part of the bed. Once you have a slight deviation, like Shlomo Zalman said, if it's not the way the Gemara says, so this is not under the bed, this is the bed. The bed has a drawer under it, could be, it's not included in the problem in the first place. A perfect mashal, which we have today, is the concept of smoking. Now, the emphasis, the Prima Godim and Tafkuf Yud Aleph, Sif Cotton Bays, and this is where Pnei Issur writes, that they dafka smoke because it was healthy. That's why he says, on Yom Tov you're allowed to smoke because it's oichel nefesh. However, today it's been proven, again, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it's not oichel nefesh, it's oichel es ha-nefesh. So today it's no longer the Dashu B'Ram Shem B'Sayim Hashem. Rav Moshe has a few tshuvas, as we all know, and he held it still a heta of Shem B'Sayim Hashem. The question is in Tavshin Pei Gimel if it's reasonable to say that. Recently I saw laying on the floor box, and whatever a strange message, I pick it up. It's a carton of a pack of cigarettes, empty of course, and a big letter says "Smoking kills." That's legal. You have to do that, right? So how could you say Dashu B'Ram Shem B'Sayim Hashem? Even the Goyish world is out Melchemes Mitzvah to stop smoking. So Taka, maybe years ago, it was hopefully, Shem B'Sayim Hashem. I wonder if that's the truth today. Rav Sternbuch and Chelik Aleph Shin Tezayin he writes about a Rosh Hashiva that was holding mamish otot, and he called a minion to his bed, and he said, I know I'm going to give a din v'cheshbon because he's dying because of smoking. So he said, and I'm going to have to give a din v'cheshbon, but at least I have a schus that I said berabim to 10 people that I was wrong, and no one should learn from my actions. So that's something to think about. Today, again, it's very difficult. Someone asked Chaim Kanievsky, is it true that the disciple says if you don't smoke on Cholamoyed, on Yom Tov, l'chumra, then it won't, the smoker won't hurt during the rest of the year. So he said, sheker. Then someone asked him, if I smoke 7 cigarettes every day, is it considered shavach on nefesh on Yom Tov? I can smoke on Yom Tov. He says, b'choil is also. Forget about the Yom Tov. The 7 cigarettes is awesome. So it's a time to start to refocusing if taka could be this is awesome, din. Another camp shaila, getting back to the Dvarim Sum Sakana, is sleeping with your feet towards the bed. Now this is something, if you're not in camp, you might... I'm sorry. So there's a wonderful set of svarim, 2 svarim, Shmir Seguf HaNefesh, who has every imaginable and unimaginable sakana. But he writes there, he says, I never found the makar for this. In fact, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky asked him, what's the makar for this? So yeah, I asked you could have 2 pretty big experts that never heard of this. So what their speculation is that we find the Sefer Chassidim that when you make a tar on the mace, you put him right next to the door. But it doesn't say if his head should be to the door or feet to the door. So he writes, his son pointed out, this is an Einfall, Kivege's famous letter, beautiful letter from Kivege he wrote to about what's getting, about life's all about, a very moving, very inspiring letter. But he says our life is so fleeting and you have to chaperein. And he says, remember, he says they're going to take you to the basic forest, they're going to leave you there. A very scary but pretty moving letter. But he writes there, when a person, Yoyam Misa, Ner Yiyah Dolok Aroishcha, Ukeneget Pesach Beischa Yeyashiru Raglecha. Kivega seemed to assume that they're going to put the feet by the mace right next to the door. So that's Reb Chaim has a few tshuvas about this, and he says people are makpid because it's minig hameis. Oil makpidim, he writes. So again, I can't say everybody has to keep it. It's not in any of the poskim. Hopefully we could apply it like kapid, like kabdinan, but if you had that minig, it has a basis in minig Yisrael. Now, someone asked me, he has a bathroom in his bedroom, and his feet is facing that door. Is the problem going out? Because you don't go out from the bathroom, you can't go out beyond the bathroom. So they asked Reb Chaim such a similar question, and I asked maybe you do it slanty, does it help? He says, I know the minig, and more than that I don't know. So if he doesn't know, how should I know? But it could be, it makes sense that the bathroom door is a different type of door, because it's not a door that you walk and take the mace out from that room, from that door, you go from a different way. And also, mistaver would be that if it's slanted slightly, it's not keneged adelis. People ask about walking in the house without shoes. So this is interesting that many are makpid, but it doesn't say any place such a minig. The asked Chaim Kanievsky, he said, mutter. Okay. What I found beautiful, the Chassam Sofer in the Anhagis of Chassam Sofer, it says in his house he'd walk dafka without shoes, not to wake up his wife or children who were sleeping. See, that's Getlichkeit. But that's a good minig. But basically it's hard to say that it's us to go without shoes, even though we know an other goes without shoes, but then again, a lot of things are available to do, they eat and drink also. So it's hard to say that become associated. So definitely it's dashu barabim. People ask about sewing clothing, sewing a button while you're wearing it. So that's in menorahs hamaor, that you shouldn't sew a beggar while you're wearing it. And that seems to be kosher l'shikcha. That's not this different geder. But the eitz is you hold something in your mouth, keep something in your mouth. And the Chaim Kanievsky, they say when he had no time to sew, his wife had to do it when he was wearing it, so he would keep tzitzis in his mouth and continue learning. So I guess that's not the end. That's not the end of the world. Now the minig of people are makpid not to allow a child to look in the mirror until he grows teeth. Now for those who never heard of it, it sounds strange, but those that know it, it's a minig kodum. So the Ber Moshe Chelik Cheslam Advav writes that this taka is no makar, but this is the Rishalmi, that what the Babas say to do, you must keep. They have, Reb Chaim has three tshuvas. I'll very briefly, he says, ha'oila makpidim, the first one. The second one, manda loy kapid. And third one, he answered, loy shamanu. But it's not a stira. The first child asked him, is there such a minig? He goes, yeah. Do I have to keep it, he asked? Loy kapid, loy kabdina. Is it true if he looks in the mirror before he grows a tooth, he won't grow teeth? Loy shamanu. That's already, adding. That doesn't say that. It's a minig not to look in the mirror. The Debetziner Rav has another mashal in the same Ber Moshe about the minig, people not to walk over a child that's on the ground. Now, he said also, there's no makar for this, but the Baba say it, you have to keep it al Rishalmi that we began with. Now, to me it was interesting, people have this kpeda, could be it also, it's a kveda adam, a pasei al roisham kodesh, the Gemara says, or maybe practically, a person might trip and fall on the baby. You don't want to do that, right? But the nafkamina is that when you walk over the child, people say, walk the other way, quick, go back over the child. Now, that's like lo yachzu shum. But the Betzina Rav Taka says that. So I remember that if they walked over a child, they make it go the other way and go back over the child. So out of my range...
Going out of a window.
That's Huda Chassid. That's good. That's a Huda Chassid, but that's not it. Now the kaped of blowing out a candle. You've noticed that by the Amid after Ma'ariv, he's standing there fanning with his hat, with his hand. That is Menorahs Hama'ar. Also says this in the Kolbai in Kuf Yud Ches quotes it. Somehow it's a Dvarim Asorim Mishum Sakana. I can't explain it, but the Samlas Chaim in Tov Tarik Tes says if someone doesn't know, that's Shem Pesayim Hashem. The Beis HaKvaris, for women to go to Beis HaKvaris, and they have to Halavaya, comes by Tzeva. So the emphasis is the Goyin said B'chal not to go in, anybody shouldn't go B'derech Klal, women, even non-Muberes should not go into Beis HaKvaris. He wrote it in Igeris. But lamait, that's a minig hagra. You know, somebody asks Abba Yashav, he doesn't want his wife to go to Beis HaKvaris for him, comes Batseva. So he goes, let me ask you a question. Do you give a chaimish of in a chasim for Maisa? He goes, no. What about minig hagra? I think he says this might be a little bit v'hu yim shalbach, not so much minig hagra. So again, minig hagra, you don't go. But if people have to go, so you have to go. Now again, during B'shasri Asan, people, the Mishmur brings not to go. But to make it cross the board dangerous, that doesn't say. I'll leave you two interesting ha'aris. There was a tumult about using aluminum foil, aluminum pans in foods. Somehow it's dangerous, it has an effect on Alzheimer's or these type of things. So I spoke to someone that's much more knowledgeable than I am, and he basically said that the FDA gave out a statement, as their European counterpart did as well, that there's not enough evidence proving this to be dangerous. In other words, excess of anything is no good, and someone has kidney problems, maybe he should be more concerned. But for the average person, it is not at all proven dangerous. Now, what does that mean? Is there a small chance? Should I be machmir? That's a bona fide example of Shem Pesayim Hashem. Tashabarabim. Now, if someone's makbid, I respect him, but you can't say it's awesome. And last but not least, Madani Shloima, this is Rav Shlomo Zalman's Talmud, in page Taf Lamed, he says he took Rav Shlomo Zalman in Tafshin Mem Vav, by car, and Zalman did not put on a seatbelt. So he asked, my high? He goes, if it's not the law, so, and no one does it, Shem Pesayim Hashem. But as soon as the law came out, he was the first one to put it on. Because now it's Dashu Barabim, and now we have to be careful. I couldn't talk to you all.
Shame Egenshir, to like it would be a Shekert or a Smith for today's share. There's a Mafta Kaddish will be a Sikkim to have the great schus of sponsoring a share called Egenshir, 718-851-8651, and email ist@yeshivanet.com. Hananya Manakash Emma Sagarish Bochel Zakes is a Shelfi Himram Toya Mitzvah Shanema, Alene Chovas Saman Sidka, Yagdul Terviade. Right. Okay, but so whoever's makbid to leave before the Sikkim could leave, whoever's makbid to stay, stays.
Okay, just let's chazor we did today, Bez Hashem. Not all school of these inyanim are created equal. That's the klal gadol. Some of them are gemaras, some of them are later sources, some of them are talim and hagim. But the basic klal is that a person has to be careful, and excessiveness is always not the right thing. Basically, many Rishonim and many Poskim hold that Shmiras Haguf HaNefesh, the concept is a deraisa. With a chaymer, as we said, ki'ilu, a suicide type of connotation. But basically, there are a few klal we have to know. Nishtana Tivim means if there's no longer a chashash, then we have a right to ignore the halachah, even though we don't do that typically unless you have a minyan achal atirah. But when it comes to sakana yanim, if you're certain there's no chashash, you could overlook it. There's also the Shem Pesayim Hashem, that even though it might be dangerous, there's a small chashash, but if people do it, you go with Klal Yisrael, the Baruch Shalom watches. When something is not a halacha, it's basically a minig, then the like kapid, like kabdina, we could say, and even if it is a minig, man the kapid, kabdina, if a person's too excessive, that's also no good. And we said the Honorable Baba Maisa has a makar and halacha, it's a mesorah, it's a minig, and basically even the Shalmi says, even if there's no makar, if that's your minig, you keep it even though other people don't keep it. Food in the bathroom, b'diavad is zicha not asa. Important klal, if there's any change in a little difference in your case than what the minig is, so we say havud leila haisif and ein lechaboy lechidushay. An example would be a person that dam, he has to wash his hands, but a blood test or if a person goes to donate blood, that's a different scenario, and there's no chiv to wash your hands. Kissing the Sefer Torah by the mantle is done by most of Klal Yisrael. Those that are makbid als germs are doing it out this special anhaga of being careful. Giving chal into one's hand, the person should not do that unless it's an avel, but those that do it, we understand this is a dashu barabim. Talking while eating, mamish while swallowing should be avoided, but the minig is to talk during a suda. It's a form of shayme pesayim Hashem. A child should not be put on the table, even a young child. That's the shulchan daimel mizbeach. Eating or drinking standing is not preferable. It's definitely better, more able to eat while sitting. Te'ima is okay standing. Pouring backwards doesn't seem to have a makar in halacha or minig. The wine of Havdalah for Nashim is not sakana. It's a minig not to. It's a minig not to make Havdalah at all. But if there's a reason she must make Havdalah, she could drink the wine. There's no sakana in that at all. Sweat from the body, except for the face, is a samamoves, but typically it's not a problem. But just be careful when the child is verschwitzt, that shouldn't touch the food that he's going to eat. Money in the mouth is dangerous and germs, and he might swallow it. Food under the bed is a sakana that hopefully b'di'evet is mutta. I can't say l'chol days, but hopefully it's mutta b'di'evet. But clothing, shoes under the bed, l'halacha, there is no kapeda. The new type of beds is probably more of a tzati mekel. It's a whole different scenario. Smoking today should be treated as a sakana, and hopefully this will start being more niskabel. Feet facing the door. There is a minig. I can't say all do it. Those that don't have that minig, it's like couple like kabdinan. Those that have it should try to rearrange the bed. Walking without shoes, there's no such kapeda. People have it, they have it, but it's not one of the kapedas they have to be worried about. And sewing while wearing the clothing should be avoided. Stepping over a child looking in the mirror, that's totally in minig of mishpacha, as we could say. Blowing out a candle should not be done. Better, fan it out. Muberis in a beis hakise, in beis hakvaris, I should say. When there's a real need, they could go. Otherwise, b'chlal, they should stay away from beis hakvaris. Aluminum foil and seat belts are both in yonim of the minig. Aluminum foil, the belt is still makel. Maybe they'll change, but you can be makel. Seat belts, that it's the law. One has to wear it. Al halachah. No? How are we doing? Walking pretty good. Right?